Hi, David Odell here with Odell Complete Concrete. It's pour day. So what you seen go into that wheelbarrow, that was the water that primes the hose. Kind of lubricates it so that the concrete goes through and doesn't get a dry lock and clog the system up. So that wheelbarrow will just sit there till the next day, and then I'll dump it into the trailer. And it'll be rock hard by then. So we've already added the fiber mesh into the load. We did that when the truck arrived. This particular job took a full load. 10 yards is the max they can carry around here, so we went with a full load. Right now I'm pulling my rod board off of the chalk lines, and then once I get both sides nice and flat, then I'll pull the rod off of either side. So we got some 2-inch dobies underneath the rebar. This was a tough pump job because we had to wrap the hose all the way around the house. So we had a good 150 feet out of hose, which means you have to drag it all back, and there's no space on the side yards to coil it. So every time you pull the hose, you've got to pull it all the way to the front and coil it up in the driveway. We also have a mow strip in the front yard, so we have to save some of the hose enough to get over there. Now we're using the 3-foot wood bowl float. It initially started as a 4-foot bowl float, but I cut it down on one job, and now it comes in really handy for this type of stuff, especially when we have a swell down the middle. So even this is a 6-foot wide side yard, and that's a 3-foot bowl float, so you can hit both sides of your valley without disturbing it after the rod, which is crucial. Since the chalk line is all sloped towards the front yard, I just have to do a little swell around the actual area drain when I get to them. Now we're all poured out, and we go to the backyard and run a little walking edger here. This particular concrete mix is a C3250, and what that means is it's got a lot of cement and no fly ash. So it's going to go off a lot quicker, and it's going to be a lot creamier. It has more cement than your basic mixtures. Which is a good thing this time of year. It's a really nice mix to use because we're pouring on pretty saturated soil because we had about three days of rain prior to this pour. Luckily we had sandy soil, so it absorbed a lot of the water. Now if this was an expansive or clay soil, you wouldn't have been able to even walk through here without sinking in and getting mud all over the rebar. Would have been a real mess, but in this case, it worked out fine. So the idea of this is clean the top of your form so you can kind of see where it is, and then run your edge. Once this is edged on both sides, I'll probably run my 3-foot Big Blue right down the middle and knock those edger lines out. We're going to hand tool all the joints in as well. We're going to pull one off the corner of the house there, and then we're going to hit it at every pilaster down that block wall, and they're spaced at 12 feet. So here's Big Blue getting hooked up. I think I have 3 poles on here right now, which will get me down this whole side yard. Because it has a rocker arm on it, I'm able to go long distances and still bring it back. Just by twisting the handle, I can control the angle of attack on that. Now that we have both sides edged here and we have the edger lines, we can take Big Blue right down the middle and knock it all out, flatten it. On that side yard, I was able to run 4 poles from each direction and hit the whole thing with Big Blue, which makes it a lot easier when you get ready to go down on this by hand. On these drain pipes, I don't have the grate in on any of them at this point. What I do is I stuff it with newspaper. That way any surface water, bleed water that comes up and tries to drain towards the actual area drain can absorb through the paper, and it also protects from concrete getting dropped into the pipe. So at this point, we're not concerned about concrete going into the pipe, so I can pull the paper out. But during the pouring and pumping, rodding, and all that, that's when the concrete will drop into that pipe if you don't have it protected. We have a little bit of splattering. Because of this particular mix design with a lot of cement in it, it's going to splatter a little bit more than your basic 2500 with heavy fly ash. This particular mix is going to splatter more on you. So you have to take that into consideration. Now here's your joints going in, and that's a 3/4 deep, 1/2 inch round walking joiner. And we're at 8-foot spacing there. Now the reason he can throw them in there like that without and know that they're straight is because the tool itself is a square. So if you square the back of your joiner up against your form, you're running square and straight. So this is our first pass down the side yard. And initially we're going to get on this just when it's a little bit wet, just to shape it up and double check everything. As I go down here, I have the 6-foot Milwaukee red stick. And what that does for me is I can rod it, the concrete, if I need to. I can cut the concrete and I can check the level all at the same time with that tool. So as I go down, if I notice any areas that seem a little sketchy, that may not run, or high point or something, I'll just drop the Milwaukee down on it and cut it in. So at this point we're cutting our joints, working the slope, and then our next pass will probably be our final, if we're lucky. Now if you notice that gas meter there, we wrapped that with some expansion foam at the same time we did the expansion foam on the side of the house. So that's going to be good for any kind of movement. There is a side passenger door out of the garage that comes over here into this side yard. So we held our grade about 3/4 of an inch below that floor elevation, which is the garage floor. That way water can't get into the garage through the side door as well. And then we have a drain really close to that side door, so we can slope it away from the door really quickly. Now this is broom time. We've already hit the concrete by hand at least twice at this point. I don't like to use a lot of water on the broom when I'm brooming concrete, because what that does is it introduces water into the top surface of the concrete, which actually weakens the surface. So if you can dry broom, you're going to end up with a lot stronger surface. So what I do like to do with my broom, which happens to be 50% horsehair and 50% nylon, I like to spray it with WD-40 occasionally. That way I can dry broom stuff and not really worry about the concrete sticking to it. Now down this side yard, it's difficult to broom it, so what we'll do is we'll just trowel out and broom as we go. The only other option would be to stand on the block wall and broom it off the wall, which I used to do quite often, but I really don't do that much anymore. Especially on that wall, because it was a 4-inch. Very dangerous. So the concrete's pretty hard at this point, otherwise you wouldn't be able to broom it right after you troweled it, otherwise it'd be very rough. And on a side yard like this, you're not going to get a lot of sun, so the rougher it is, it's going to build up algae and mold a lot quicker, because water's going to sit in those deep cuts of your broom. So you want to keep it as smooth as possible, but still non-slip. Here we are 3 days later, coming back to the job site. We stripped it out. And oh, by the way, I had to mention that after we poured this on a Friday, we started pouring at 7. We wrapped it up at 12:30. By 1:30, we had a heavy downpour here, and we're fortunate that I had this particular mix, because the rain didn't affect it at all. It actually helped it. It water cured itself naturally. And it also gave the homeowner the heads up that, yeah, it drains, and he knew within an hour after I placed it. Now if I didn't have gutters on this house, we didn't have the downspouts into drains, and it did, and say it did rain without all these different things happening, it would have been a complete removal, most likely. because all the gutters would have drained right onto the concrete. You would have had a steady flow in specific locations, and that really eats it up. So I just pressure washed the entire job, the walls, the house, the whole works. That's why you'll see, that's why it's wet right now. But you can see that there's really no standing water whatsoever. And the slope is very minimal. Those grates are removable also, by the way, in case you want to ram a water hose in there to clean a system out from time to time. You can. Anyway, thank you for watching. Have a great day.